Hello, Facebook. I'm Dr. Katherine.Kelly. I'm going to kind of wait around a little while, a few minutes while we get some of the people filing in, and I also have a Zoom version of this that I do, so I'm going to put myself on the camera for that, and we're going to get ourselves going in just a minute. So get a few people here. So as I'm managing this, I'm going to be having a Zoom call going at the same time that I am having the, uh-oh, I think I might have lost Zoom. um, let's see what is happening here. Okay. I have a Zoom call going at the same time that I have Facebook going, so bear with me as we get going. And let me see, the camera is trying to tell me. See if we can get this going here. Okay. Okay, so for those of you who are just joining, if you would like to type your name in, say hi, just so I know who's here. I know that there was a family of 4 that was coming in today. I've had many other people that are checking in as well. We've been doing this for about 5 months now, and we've had a really good turnout. I'm excited to see kind of who shows up today. And also what we're going to be talking about tonight is the dark night of the soul and how you get through that. And I'm going to be managing a couple different systems here tonight, because some people don't use Facebook and some people would prefer Zoom. So we're going from a couple different directions. So you'll see me looking up and down and getting things going a little bit. So for the first few minutes, a lot of what I do is I just kind of get people acclimated. If you are new to either one of these platforms, I'm going to open up a screen here with Zoom so that people can, there we go, so people can say hello. If you're new to either one of these platforms and you want to make a comment, if it's a Facebook comment, just go ahead and type it into the comment section. Again, if you want to say hello so we know who's out there, put your name in, and then you can ask questions either way. Now, if you're on a Zoom call and you want to ask a question, same thing. You go into the group chat, which is at the bottom of the screen. If you move the little cursor, you should be able to see this little chat box pop up, and you can type in your questions to the right of your screen. And then we will keep this going as time goes on. Now, my assistant's on board, so she'll be helping with some of this. Have a couple people, Michelle, hello Michelle, Diane, and sometimes I have to pull the screen down a little bit so I can see everybody that comes in, but feel free to, again, make a comment, ask a question. My assistant will kind of help me keep track of those so that I don't miss any of those. I also want to say a couple things. It is raining like crazy here. I think last month when I did this session as well, it was really, really rainy. I don't know if it's going to die down, but it is lightning and thundering, and we had a flash flood warning come in, so hopefully the connection will continue, and we'll go from there. But I hope everybody stays safe. I'm not sure where everybody's coming from, but stay safe. And we will hope that the connection stays going for a while. Hi, Patty. Welcome. Come on in. And then we've got another person with Zoom. The other thing I will say is that we may have a couple visitors. My dogs tend to come in and out. My 3-year-old puppy is quite playful this evening, so if you see her shoot in and out, she may want to say hi. Hi, Jenny. Good to see you again. And so we'll go with it. I'm pretty good at going a little bit at a time with this thing. So I'm going to wait just a couple more minutes to really dig into the information, because this to me is a really important conversation that we're going to have tonight, because of the fact that I think each and every one of us as souls, as human beings, have gone through a dark night of the soul, if not more. I know that I've gone through probably 3 or 4 pretty heavy ones through my life. And to me, as a psychologist, you know, that's the interesting thing. I'm obviously a psychologist by training, my early training, and then I do a lot of soul work by my later training, and I merge the two to pull them together. And to me, a dark night of the soul goes beyond depression. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that, where the term originated, how to get through it, all those kinds of things. So Share what you feel comfortable sharing. Type it in, because that's the best way for us to get, hi Janie, nice to see you again. That's the best way for us to get the information and get the questions out there. So type in your questions or comments. Hey Cheryl, a friend of mine says, looking good for such a busy day. I had 9 clients today, and then I had a plumber come at 6:15 because I woke up to a garbage disposal that was leaking under my sink. So I've had a very full day today, but I am happy to be here. I love doing these conversations. So join in. Linus, a friend of mine named Linus is popping in. So I'm not sure if you can hear me yet, but Linus, hello, and type me a message if you can hear me, and so I can say hello. And let's see here. We've got lots of people coming in. This is great. Okay. So I'm going to keep this ball rolling, but I'm going to talk just a little bit about the dark night of the soul, why I decided to do it now, and then I'll kind of go more into the information. As all of you know, this has been a very challenging time for people. I think we've had a pretty challenging time for a while, and then COVID hit, and that was one of those things where I think it came on even stronger, because in our neck of the woods in North Carolina, it's probably been since mid to the end of February when we started having cases here. And of course, depending on where you are around the world, then you are probably experiencing your own dark night in terms of COVID. This election has been very challenging for people. And then we have life stuff going on top of that. And as a psychologist, I help people deal with their own dark nights of the soul, even if they don't know that that's what they are, because a lot of times they think they're majorly depressed, which they are, but that usually there's a bigger experience. There's almost a life crisis that comes with certain kinds of depression. And so when I talk about depression, I usually look at things differently than what a lot of practitioners would, because of the fact that I look at the whole person. I look to see what all is going on in a person's life. What are all of the aspects of a person's life that are being affected? And more often than not, people feel like their entire worlds have fallen apart. And so it is depression, but to me, a dark night of the soul goes beyond it. And right now, there is so much going on in our world, so much that's going on in our country, that I just felt like it was really important for me to talk about this topic right now. And so again, if you have, hello Linus, yes it has been a very long time. She's a radio host that I've been on her show several times, and she's joining us tonight. Her name is Linus. And I'll send out her information for her show later if you'd like to join that show too. But again, I think this is a really key time, because we are about to enter seasonal affective time. So winter time is very hard for people. We already have COVID going on. We still have this election situation going on, and we have lots of life stuff going on. So we have to really think about all of these layers. And to me, a dark night of the soul is one of those times when you feel like you are being pulled apart in every single way, and you're feeling deflated. You feel like there's no hope. You lose meaning in life. You lose interest in life. You feel like the clouds and the showers and the storms just keep coming. One thing after another happens. So you don't feel like there is any way to get grounding when there's a dark night of the soul. And again, you can all share what you feel comfortable sharing here, because I know that pretty much every human being on this planet has had a dark night. And so feel free to share if you'd like to, but we also understand that this is a public forum, so be careful with what you share if you don't want the world to know necessarily. But again, I think everybody I know, all of my friends, all of my family members, obviously clients, are having dark nights of the soul or have had them. So I want to throw this out there, because I'm kind of a history geek when it comes to figuring out where some of these terms come from. And so several centuries ago, there was a Spanish monk, and he was the one who coined the idea of the dark night of the soul. Now, the dark night of the soul then was referred to a little bit differently than it is now. And so he was a Spanish monk. His name was St. John of the Cross, so several centuries ago. And he coined that term to be one of those, again, very soul-crushing times when the world just pops open and you don't know what happened. But usually, for what he had experienced, is that there would be some sort of mystical experience that would be involved. There would be something very spiritual that would be involved with the dark night. Now, the term dark night of the soul has been expanded and used and kind of broadened to the point where, again, it's like a time in a person's life when you feel no light. You feel like all of the darkness is there. It's so heavy that you can't get out of it. Everywhere you turn, you're in quicksand, or I call it clawing your way through life. You feel like everything is effort. And again, event after event happens to the point where you don't feel like you can get anywhere. The reason as a psychologist that I think that it goes beyond depression is the fact that with the symptoms of depression, you have loss of appetite, you have loss of interest, you can have irritability, you can have that low mood, you can have appetite issues, you can have concentration issues. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have lost faith. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have lost meaning. It just means that you're feeling low. But when you have a dark night of the soul, it usually hits you at such a deep and visceral level that you really feel like every cell in your body is being ripped apart and being changed. Can anybody relate to this? And again, I'm assuming everybody can. And it's one of those things where, and I'm happy to see, again, I'm not pressuring you because I know that this is personal stuff. But if you'd like to share anything about what you have come through and what you've learned, I think that would be helpful for the rest of the group as well. But again, getting back to kind of the description of a dark night of the soul, I remember at least 3 key times in my life when I went through such a wrenching time where I didn't know how I was going to get my next breath. I didn't know where I was going to sort of find the light again. There was so much going on that it just felt like every single piece of me was being dismantled, and I didn't know if I could be put back together again. Now, I agree with what St. John of the Cross said, meaning that there is a deeper experience, there's a mystical experience, there's a spiritual experience that comes with a dark night of the soul. Because what you do is you dive deeply to the point where really everything that was meaningful to you before gets revamped. Some of it gets checked out the window, some of it gets fine-tuned or redefined, some of it you go to new levels. Sometimes you actually do have mystical experiences where you have premonitions, or you have times where you see spiritual guides. You see, lots of people have told me that they've seen ancestors, or they've had these conversations with spirit guides or ancestors from their past. There's all kinds of different ways that a dark night of the soul can happen for a person. But what is true is that everybody feels so dark and so bad that they really have to, again, I say crawl their way through life, claw their way through. That darkness is one of those things where you do not know if you can get out of it. Now, again, sometimes I think this goes beyond just a major depression, because it's every cell in your body, every thought, every belief, every previous mindset just either gets shattered, or it gets kind of revamped in a way that you don't know how you're going to get out of it. Now, I have had many, many clients come to me because they come from a spiritual faith, but that spiritual faith has been shattered due to something that's happened in their lives. So maybe I'm going to be careful so I don't disclose information, because I have lots of examples I can give you. Maybe a person is now questioning God. You know, that is a very common theme of the dark night of the soul. It's like, okay, where the heck is God in all of this if I'm feeling this bad? So a lot of times I call it couples therapy between God and the person, meaning that I kind of have to help them rebuild a sense of faith, maybe not the sense of religion that they had, but a sense of faith. Because oftentimes it's difficult for a person to still believe the things that they used to believe, when in fact their faith is being so shaken at such a deep core that they can't really get beyond whatever the event was. And I'm trying to be general here because I don't want to give, again, information away to the point where I disclose anything. I have been mad at God before. When my dad died when I was 21, it kind of blew my world because number one, 21 is to me too young to lose a father. Number two, it really blew the family. His accident when I was 9 blew the family, but when he died, it really kind of ripped things apart in a different way. And so I just remember being very mad at God, very angry at what I thought I believed. And from that point on, I had to go about rebuilding and understanding life, every bit of life in a different way, because um, that's what happens. Those dark nights of the soul change you. They change you. Depression changes you, but the dark nights of the soul change you at such a visceral level that then you have to go back and rebuild your identity over and over again every time you have one of those dark nights. Tough stuff, but it's also part of our evolution. And so that's the other part of what I want to bring to you is that for those of you who know me and those of you who know my website, you know that I talk about conscious evolution. Well, conscious evolution, as far as we know, we are the only species on this planet that can think about changing, that we can think about moving forward and doing something differently in our lives so that we can get further. So when it comes to a dark night of the soul, we have to think our way out of something. We have to consciously decide that we are going to take our lives further or take our lives in a different direction so that we can either survive or we can thrive. And so oftentimes it's those dark nights of the soul that change us at such a fundamental level and a deep level that it actually heightens our awareness and raises our consciousness and raises us into this new understanding. And yet we don't think that's what's going to happen when it's happening. We always think that, we're going to go further into the darkness. And oftentimes we come out seeing the light in a much different way. Now, and I'm going to go back and help you understand what happened for me when my father died, because I think this is going to help you start to put things together. Like I said, I was 21 when he died. To me, my life was just beginning, and yet his life ending put me into this place where I really kind of had to grow up even faster. Now, again, I was 9 years old when his accident happened. I had to grow up very fast at that point. But when I was 21 and that happened, I had to put back together my ideas about religion, my ideas about spirituality, my ideas about protection, because when your parents are gone, you don't feel overly protected or guided. You feel like you're on your own. I had to really revamp every part of my life, including getting past that time that I was so angry at God and so angry at the situation that I didn't think I was going to get out of it. I was a junior. I had just finished my junior year in college, and when he died on December 26th that year. And I just remember feeling like, how in the heck am I going to get through this? He was the person in my family who always supported my career ideas, no matter what they were, and he was gone. I had to rebuild everything. But what happened for me is I also realized, and this is the key, I also realized that by his passing at that point, it opened up my life in a way I wasn't expecting, because I stayed home in the hometown for myself to go to college so that I could help with him, help with his care. But when he passed, I realized that that was going to give me the opportunity to finally move away and go to graduate school and really start my life. Now, I couldn't see that at the very beginning because I was in so much pain. But as time went on, I realized that that dark night of having to grieve his loss actually opened up my world, and I would not be sitting here today had it not been for that experience. And I can do grief counseling much better than I think I would have had this not happened. I can understand the dark night of the soul. I was able to go on to graduate school and go into medical psychology and help people who have severe medical kinds of concerns. I was able to understand the spiritual world much more and take it far further than I would have ever been able to do had I not had that experience. Now, granted, I've had other experiences since then that have been very difficult, that have taken me into new levels too. But it's also all about the conscious perspective you take. So the conscious evolution piece of this was me being able to look back and ask myself, why did this happen? Why was it that it happened at that juncture? What was it that put it all together for me? And And it was interesting, and I remember this very clearly, that it took me about 7 years to grieve his passing, and because there were so many levels of things that I was trying to figure out. And it was about 7 years after his passing that I actually figured out that that event of his passing opened up my world. And it happened as I was talking to a therapist for myself. I had gone through a divorce prior, just right prior to that, and I was getting ready to go into my internship. And I remember telling her, her name was Nancy, and I remember telling her, and I hadn't put all these pieces together prior to saying the words, but I had said to her, you know, it seems strange for him not to be here because he was the one who supported all of my crazy career ideas, no matter what they were, from day one. And as soon as I had that thought, it all came together. I was able to see, whoa, wait a minute, that was supposed to happen for my own development so that I could be where I was at that point and understand from a higher consciousness perspective why these difficult things happen. So it was one of these magical, mystical experiences, even if it felt delayed. So it was about 7 years, like I said, after his actual death. I wasn't in a dark period that entire time, but I basically, at that point, it blew open. The sunlight came in. I was able to see things so much clearer. So many more things happened to help pull it all together. And then a couple of years later, I went through another dark night about some other things that had happened. And so it was one of those things where then I could take it to the next level, and then the next level, and the next level. So when I look back, for those of you who, again, know my soul health model, when I look back, I realized that that soul health model would not exist had it not been for my dad's accident when I was 9, his passing when I was 21, and my other dark nights of the soul that happened up until now. And so about 14 years ago, I published the soul health model. And it's, for those of you who don't know, it's basically a picture of a tree, an image of a tree with 10 different branches of the human condition that all of us in one way or another have to kind of learn to balance and understand to feel whole and grounded and to feel like we're vibrant souls. And to me, the soul is the essence of who we are. And that essence is there to grow and evolve. But if our human condition branches are out of whack or broken or damaged, or we are going through that long-term dark night of the soul, we are not going to be able to move forward. So the beautiful thing now is that I can look back and see that all of those very difficult things I had to go through and all those dark times I went through, if I look at them with conscious eyes, I can understand why I had to go through them. That's where the dark night of the soul is actually something to embrace when it happens. And I know that does not sound like a fun thing to do, is to embrace those things, but we do go through difficult times in order to grow. So that's where we have to remember that this is here. These experiences are here to take us forward. These experiences are here for us to learn more about ourselves, more about who we are as individuals, and learn more how to cope in a way that will help us get through the human condition even better. So does that all make sense? Is there anybody who wants to make a comment about anything? Because I want to make sure that I'm kind of keeping up with things for folks right now. So whether you want to type something in on Facebook or Zoom, I just want to hear if this is all making sense, or if you have questions, because nobody really wants to embrace the dark night, but at the same time, it takes us to a higher level. It takes us through that conscious evolution perspective. So let me see. I have a yep. Resonates with me and where I'm at in this stage. Okay, wonderful. And I think that's it, is that this is, I think every human being on this planet goes through a dark night, even if they don't know that that's what this is. Because we, in the clinical world, which my psychopathology professors had a hard time with me because I didn't like categories, and I didn't want to put people in categories for depression and anxiety, because I see things from the soul perspective. But unfortunately, many practitioners only see it from the human perspective, and so they don't realize that there's something deeper and even more beautiful going on if you can dig down to that level. So thank you for commenting on that, Karen. And if there's, again, anybody else that wants to comment, I'll make sure that we're in here. Yes, civilizations go through dark nights too, and that resonates well. So I'm going to comment on that, Janie, because Last month, my newsletter topic was the dark night of the soul of the world, and how do you deal with that? Because um, and I actually have not looked recently. I was looking almost every day to see how many COVID cases were in the world and how many COVID cases were going on in this country and how many deaths there were. I know that our country has had over 240,000 deaths to COVID. That, and people who don't believe that it's a problem need to believe that 240,000 people is twice the size of the city that I grew up in. And when it hit 100,000, it really hit me because I'm thinking that was the population of the city that I grew up in, and that would mean that my entire city, my hometown, would be gone. And so the dark night of the world right now is, if you think about world wars, both of the world wars, the Korean War, any other major pandemic, any other major world event that affected many, many countries, those were dark nights of the souls. That's also, as Janie said, the dark night of civilization. So we think of things like the Holocaust. To me, that was a dark night of the soul. We think of the conquests in South America. Millions of natives died when the Spaniards came and tried to take over. Well, I shouldn't say tried, took over South America and all the countries. So we have many times in history when we had dark nights of the soul. I would say the Civil War was a dark night of the soul on both sides because so many millions of people died. What we don't really put together is the fact that if there are really 8 billion souls on this planet and this pandemic is going on and it's affecting every country, pretty much every country, then we have to think of it as the dark night of the world's soul as well. And what do we do with that? How do we get past that? And one of the toughest things to think about is beyond ourselves. I know that one of the things that happened for me, I traveled to Peru. And I found out recently, well, I found out at the beginning of COVID, they were being hit very, very seriously. And I think part of it is that they don't have the communication system that we do. They don't have the protection that we do. It's a very impoverished country. And so it was spreading much, much more quickly than it might have in a different country. So their entire country shut down, their airports shut down, everything shut down. I still cannot get anything mailed to me from Peru because their post office have been shut down for so long. And so we have to really think about the fact that individually we can have a dark night of the soul, but like Janie said, we can have a civilization. And right at this moment, I do think that this is somewhat of a dark night of the soul for the world. So this is not just individual. This is how I want to make sure I'm keeping pan down so I can see everybody's comments. So this is why we have to think about this in terms of thinking beyond ourselves. Now, I personally, I talk about the soul of people. If the soul is the essence of who we are, that's it. I don't apply any religious meaning to the soul because every person on this planet has a soul, and I would argue that every animal on this planet has a soul, and some people would say every plant on this planet has a soul. So anything that has life has somewhat of a soul. But if you think about the essence of the soul and how we are impacted at a time when the world is going through so much, I personally think that part of the reason that we are unfortunately going through COVID is we're supposed to be going within. We're supposed to be getting back in touch with that inner part of ourselves because we are so disconnected. We are so disconnected from living in a soulful way, living in a spiritual way, living in a much more connected way with ourselves and others. And so that's what pulls people apart, is to be disconnected. Even though COVID looks like it's pulling us apart because we are isolated, I personally think that one of the bigger meanings of this is to come together as a world crisis so that we are able to understand that as each and every individual soul heals, we are going to have the capacity to connect better with each and every soul on this planet. Does that make sense with people? Because I think that's the other thing we have to think about. And I know this is a tough one to kind of get into and explore because we get very we get very disconnected because we get into our ego state. And our ego state, I'm not meaning arrogant state, I mean ego state of fear and ego state of, oh my gosh, I need to take care of me. I can't think of taking care of other people or anybody outside of myself. And I think, yes, Linus, this is very true. I think this is the thing that we have to remember is that when we heal our own souls, when we get so in contact with our own souls, we are much better able to connect with and heal the soul of the world. So this COVID situation is actually happening for us to heal not only ourselves, but heal the soul of the world. Now, I found it very interesting that Joe Biden's byline for his election was healing the soul of America. I was intrigued by that. And he didn't really go into that a ton in his speeches, but I knew what he meant is that the core of our country is broken, or the core of our country is divided, and somehow we need to come back together. When we go through a dark night of the soul, we feel broken and we feel like we are separated from ourselves. And so this is why I think this is such an important topic for us to talk about, is to get ourselves to that point where we reconnect. So any questions? I want to make sure that I know I'm talking because I just want to get the information out there, but do you have any questions so far about the dark night of the soul and how you've experienced your own, or what, anything about it? I just want to make sure that I answer anything before I go on. Okay, can anxiety be a symptom of the dark night of the soul? Absolutely. So yes, let me see how I want to answer this, because I'm going to tell you the clinical part of that, and then I want to tell you the soul part of that. So the clinical part of that, so anybody who has anxiety has worrisome thoughts. They have worrisome thoughts. They have ruminating thoughts. Nothing ever feels calmed within them. They may have the physical symptoms of heart racing, palpitations, sweaty palms, dizziness. Some people have numbness. Some people have difficulty swallowing. So we have to think of people in terms of, we usually lean to one side or the other. We either lean toward the anxious side or we lean toward the depressive side. To me, and if any of you have read my book, and I know some of you have, in the emotional chapter, in the psychological chapter, I talk about emotions are basically symptoms of the soul. And I'm not minimizing them to the point where they aren't clinically relevant, because we do have symptoms that are clinically relevant. But usually, again, our emotions are trying to get our attention in one way or another. They're trying to get us to do something differently, because as you've probably heard me say thousands of times before, we don't change anything unless we're tired enough of ourselves or our situations. So our anxiety that we have can stimulate us to get uncomfortable with ourselves enough to go do something differently. However, it can also immobilize us. So our depression can immobilize us, and our anxiety can immobilize us. But again, if you look at any emotion that we have, irritability, anger, sadness, depression, anything that is kind of there to stir us, it is a symptom of the soul. It's trying to get our attention. Our soul is trying to say something is misaligned. And yet a lot of times we read it wrong, or we don't read it at all. We just think it's anxiety or depression. It's something deeper, though. It's something that is trying to get our lives back in line or back aligned. Now, in my family, I have a very long history of depression, and also a long history of bipolar disorder. I do not have bipolar disorder. I think the depression that I have had basically has been situational depression from these dark nights of the soul. I don't really have a clinical depression, but there is, like I said, there's a history. And so that's why I say I try to separate the human part of it from the soul part of it, because the times that I've gone through the difficulties have been very life-changing, and I've come out on top. But again, boy, I've had to go through those cycles a few times. I want to read the rest of Linus's comment here. She says, I suffered from it for about 25 years as a result of mother's death. And yes, she and I have talked about this before. She was killed on her way to work by a fire truck. How I found out was very devastating, and I started having anxiety about a year later. For 25 years. It is mostly gone now, and I've learned how to manage it. So what I would say to Linus or anybody else is the whole idea of how did it change you, and did it take you higher? Did it take you to a place where you could understand the world differently or understand your perspective of the world differently? Sometimes we don't know to go there. Sometimes we resist healing in the way that, and I know that sounds odd, but we resist healing because emotion is very seductive. We say we don't want to feel a certain way, but then what do? We do everything to reinforce that emotion even further. So for those 25 years, Linus, you may or may not have known how to get out of that, or you may or may not have known how to look above it so that you could see how this was changing you or how this could take you to that higher level. Trauma is a tough thing. Emotional trauma is a tough thing because it is there to teach us and for us to learn. The problem is it's painful and it's difficult. And unless you find someone who helps you disentangle it and decipher, it's probably going to keep you mired. And so, I know I'm a different bird. I take things from a different level from helping people heal from depression and anxiety and other things, trauma, to help them find meaning in the situation. If that person wants to find the meaning. Not everybody does, but that's where it takes you to that higher level. And I would guess, okay, and she said it did definitely take me to a higher place. It's the reason why I ended up creating my business that you've had for 12 years. Just to let you know, and again, I will be happy to share Linus's information. But she does inspirational work. She does very inspirational radio shows, and she has a magazine, and everything is about moving you forward and being very involved in your own evolution. And I use the word evolution. Hers is development, and hers is personal growth. So it is one of those things where if we can learn to take these experiences to a higher level and ask ourselves, what are we supposed to be getting from this? That's how that spiritual development happens on top of the human development of knowing how to handle and manage depression from a human perspective. And I want to comment on that with COVID in a second. Janie says that Joe Meacham wrote a book on the idea of the soul of America. Okay. And so, really understanding an individual as a soul, a country as a soul, the world as a soul, I think is an important part. We are all kind of in this together as living creatures. I want to throw this in there about COVID. Now, it is a tough one because it is a very smart virus. It is one of the smartest viruses the researchers have ever seen because it is it knows how to get in there. It's not just a respiratory illness. What the researchers are showing and finding is that this is basically a vascular illness. So, that's why you're seeing some people die from heart attacks. Some people are dying from lung problems. Some people are dying from hemorrhages. Some people are, having, all kinds of strange symptoms, the intestinal symptoms. So not everybody's having the same symptoms. This is a smart virus because what they are finding is that it goes in and it attacks the most vulnerable vascular system in your body. So if someone already has a heart problem, well, then that's where it's going to affect. For if someone has an injury, so let me give you an example of this. Appalachian State in Boone, North Carolina, had a 19-year-old football player die from COVID. Me putting two and two together is that football player probably had, several hits to the head, had some, bruising and kinds of maybe not visible brain damage. But I have a client who actually knew the physician who took care of him when he was brought in. And the physician said it was the worst hemorrhage he'd ever seen in a client in his whole history as being a physician. Again, vascular damage to the brain, that's where the virus hit. The reason I'm bringing that up is that this virus is a tricky one, and it is meant to, and then I'm looked at this from a spiritual perspective, it is meant to keep us on our toes so that we do our inner work. So that we have to look in and we have to prioritize. Many people have prioritized their lives differently. They've had to prioritize their lives differently since COVID started. Many people are seeing how important family and friends are. Many people are seeing that, well, maybe I don't need to go get my hair done every week, or gosh, I don't really need to get my toenails done every week, or so it's like people who are going to Starbucks every morning for a cup of coffee. I can't do that anymore. People are having to revamp their lives, tighten up, and also become much more aware of what is meaningful. I think the upcoming holidays are going to be interesting because we can't do them the same way, but many people are choosing to do them in a much more meaningful way than they've ever done them because they're having to think of it differently. So it's really interesting what is happening with this COVID situation. I want to look, had another comment come in from Karen, or often our bodies are yelling at us as well. Headaches, nausea, absolutely. And I'm gonna bring that up too. Thank you for saying that. Looking for ways to stay grounded and embrace the meaning of my situation. Perfect, Karen. Yes, so I just spoke to someone today who was having some issues with her health. And I was helping her see that her body was basically trying to get her attention. She had had some headaches come up, and she had some nausea come up out of the blue. It wasn't something that she's used to having or even has. And I helped her. I asked, well, how's your stress been? And first thing she said, well, gosh, I guess it was worse than I thought. Have another client, my 8 o'clock client from this morning. Basically, she was having some things going. Her back went out. There were 3 things that happened. Her back went out. I can't remember the other 2, but within the last week and a half. And then I asked her, how has your stress level been? She wasn't listening to the fact that her stress level had been ramping up. So her body was trying to get her attention, which means her soul was triggering her body to say, hey, give her a headache. Hey, make her back hurt. Hey, let's get her attention to slow her down. That is the mind, body, spirit connection. So once I helped her see that that was a big part of what was going on for her, she's like, oh my gosh, I am not paying attention to my stress level. So I'm checking in with her in 2 weeks to find out how things are going now that she knows this was probably stress related. This is a curious thing, and this was way back to when I was a professor at the medical school. Research is still about the same, but that was 16 years ago since I left that job. But the research back then was that 80% of visits to physicians' offices were for mind-body conditions, meaning were for stress. I would basically say that a lot of that is true today as well. So, you have to think about our bodies are trying to cue us, just like Karen said, to look at our stress because we are ignoring how stressed out we actually are. Dark night of the soul, oftentimes we have major health problems come up because we're supposed to wake up to something. And I'm not saying that's the only reason it happens, but a lot of times we have to have something jolt us in order for us to not take life for granted or to change our lives. I've heard many people quitting really stressful jobs because of their health problems and then leading their lives into something that's much more meaningful and satisfying. I've had all kinds of different, ways that people have re-geared their lives according to their dark nights of the soul. So, Karen, thank you for mentioning that and reminding me to bring that up. So, other comments, other questions? I want to make sure I'm not just talking into the air because I could keep talking forever, but I want to make sure that I answer the questions that you all have here. And I'm going to keep an eye on this as we're talking. Now, how to survive these. Now, the challenge is the first one you go through, oftentimes you don't even realize it's a dark night of the soul. You just feel terrible. You just feel like everything is out to get you. You feel like the world is out to get you. You feel like your world is falling apart. So most people don't know with that initial dark night of the soul that that's what it is, and they don't really know how to survive it. If you go through another one or you start to slip back in, then oftentimes you're able to catch it. First thing I would say, now I'm going to go at this from the human level first, because I do think we are humans having, we're souls having a human experience, but we also are dealing with the human condition. You have to start looking for kind of the cues that you're going through a dark night. So you have to start looking at how deeply are you feeling, how deeply are you feeling bad or crappy for the, really is this really a depression? Is this a situational depression, or are you fundamentally being challenged to change something about your life or change a mindset? You have to become conscious of what's happening, in other words. So step one is to become aware. I know it's cliche to say the first step is to become aware, but at the same time, you have to become aware as a human being in order to evolve beyond whatever is going on. So the consciousness is the first part. The second part is to search for the meaning, search for what it is that is going on inside of you and what is supposed to be changing and evolving. Now, I often reflect back to some of the books that I've read, because I think about the biographies I've read and the difficult things people have been through and how they have gotten through them. Viktor Frankl was basically in the Holocaust. He was in a concentration camp. His most famous book was The Man's Search for Meaning. He got through the concentration camps by basically finding meaning in those terrible situations. That was what got him through, and then he went on to become a psychologist and really do a lot of good for people. So his ability to look for the meaning was what got him through. That is part two. Look for the meaning, and I think that's probably, I can't say it's more important than becoming conscious, because you have to become conscious in order to look for the meaning. But look for the meaning. How is this changing me? How can I help it change me? How am I not living my life richly enough or fully enough, or appreciating life, or appreciating the way that, I don't know, that you have relationships, or the way that you interact with the world? What is the wake-up call? What is the meaning that is there? That is what creates the positive outcome of a dark night of the soul, is to really look at what it is that you're supposed to be getting out of the situation. I am not a person who believes in the idea of no pain, no gain. However, I do believe that that difficulty and that pain and that discomfort stirs us and kind of rototills what's going on in our lives so that we can upend it and look at something differently. And I think that's the main thing, is those dark nights of the soul are here to create a different outcome. And so for Linus, after she got past some of the anxiety and got past some of the healing, she was able to bring it full circle and be able to help the world, help the people that she helps in her 12 years in her career so far. So we have to kind of look at what it is that our souls are trying to ask us to evolve into. I saw a question come up here. Okay, so Tama says, what are the warning signs of stress? Well, we have lots of warning signs. Some of them are emotional, some of them are physical. And I'm going to add this question to it, how can we look at those as dark nights of the soul? So warning signs of stress. So, and I'm going to give you an example too of a woman that I just had a session with. It was the first session that I had with her tonight. It was my 5 to 6, and she admitted that she goes because she doesn't want to look at all of the difficult things in her life, but that all of it is starting to catch up with her. Her body is kind of giving her problems. Her emotions are giving her problems. She told me she's got everything around her in the world she needs from a material perspective, but she's not happy. She's not having the fulfillment because she's outrunning herself. So physical signs of stress are those panic attacks, the difficult physical symptoms that I talked about with these clients earlier today, the back problems, the headaches, the stomach problems, the aches and pains, the fatigue. Fatigue is a big one. We also look at the emotional signs. In other words, are you falling apart at the seams? And I tell people, it's like, we when we're feeling like we're falling apart at the seams, it is a major cue from our souls that we need to realign. But if we have to look at the difference between just being stressed and feeling like we're going into that dark night of the soul. And so there's that human versus that spiritual perspective of this. Everybody has stress. That is like the human condition underlined right there. But we have to look at this from this perspective of, is whatever we are going through, is it supposed to change us in some way? If it doesn't change us, we have to look at ourselves like, okay, what are we not learning here? What are we not gleaning from the situation? Because I can tell you it will happen again if you haven't learned what you're supposed to learn. That's how the universe works. So I just saw a nod. Yeah, I saw a nod on the Zoom video. So, I tell people it's like, I call it cosmic kicks in the pants, that if we don't learn it the first time, we're going to get a cosmic kick in the pants. It's the same thing or something very similar is going to come up until we get it. I also I call the opportunity to learn something new a cosmic do-over. That if we have those things coming over and over again, and we finally go, oh, wait a minute, I need to do something differently, there's your do-over. You get that opportunity to redo your life, do something differently, and there's your way out of that dark night of the soul. So it's one of those things where, I have all these terms I use and throw around because it's fun, because it makes it a little more lighthearted, but we have to have a path. We have to have something that's going to shake us free. Sometimes it's a partner or a spouse that kicks us in the pants, that we need to do something differently. And that's good too, because that means that that's a blessing for you. Let's see here. Have a comment over here, finding themselves getting angry quickly. This is new for me. What is happening? Okay. Irritability. Irritability, again, is one of those, what I call a symptom of the soul. Anybody who has that irritability or that quick temper, that has never had that before, you have to look at, are you so depleted that you don't have anything left to be able to calm yourself and have an interaction that is more to your liking? So a lot of times irritability is that you're so deflated, you're so depleted that you can't get your breath. Irritability to me, and this is because I'm not an angry person usually, but if I get irritable, I know I'm not taking care of myself well enough, and I know that I need to step back and really do some what I call radical self-care. Really get back into that place of, instead of being outside of myself and scrambling to just try to survive, I have to pull back and go, what am I not doing? How is my soul starving here? How am I not doing the kinds of things that I need to do in order to present myself in a way that I am going to feel good about? Because irritability to me is that you're just done. Your tank is so low that you have very few resources. That's where that conscious evolution comes in to say, what do I do to take care of myself differently? Now I'm going to throw this in here because obviously I'm talking in terms of the soul versus mental health, because I personally think that our self-care has to be soul care. We have to feed ourselves at a much deeper level if we are going to rise above a situation into a place where we actually are grounded regardless of the stressors that are going on around us. I have people tell me that I'm like the calmest person they know, and I'm not always, let me just say that, but when I get irritable or when I get short, I know it's because my tank is so low. So Tom, I hope that helps you understand that, because I think we have to get, that was her question, as I'm feeling herself getting angry. I think it's just one of those things where if we start getting irritable, we have to really take some ownership in, what am I not doing to care for my soul? What am I not doing to keep my tank full? Because it's very easy for us to get depleted and drained from life. This life thing is not an easy thing. I don't know any person on this planet who thinks life is easy. I would love to see someone and meet that person, because it is certainly not easy. Human condition is a pickle, as I say. So, okay, so I have a client saying, or a person saying that irritability is like a child's tantrum. Usually a child will have a tantrum when they're tired and frustrated and depleted. Absolutely. And my dogs do that. My older dog, if she's tired and she doesn't want my 3-year-old, young puppy, young dog getting her, she's going to growl or she's going to bite. She's done. And it's the same way with us. As if our tank is not full, we are going to have a hard time. Now, I don't have a piece of paper right by me to draw this. I mean, it is in my Recipe for Radiance book, but if you can imagine like a flower pot or some sort of vessel, and you imagine cracks on one side, holes in another side, fissures in another side, and you just start imagining the water or the soil kind of pouring out. If you're not doing enough to fill up that pot, it's going to keep leaking out. And so if you imagine each one of those broken parts as a fissure or a part of life that has broken you or that's draining you, a dark night of the soul often has multiple kinds of aspects of your life that are draining you, whether it's a health problem, whether it's a job issue, a relationship issue, maybe it's a financial issue, whatever it might be that is creating that. It's draining you out. And so, you have to find enough. You have to consciously decide you're going to do enough to fill up that tank or that vessel so that you're not going to leak out completely. So think about, is that part of it, is my tank empty? Am I not taking good enough care about myself or about myself? There's one other thing I was going to say when I was talking and I've already forgotten it, but it has to do with soul care. To me, is that conscious knowing that you have to take care of yourself at all costs. You cannot let someone else is not going to do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. And that's the biggest problem, is that a lot of times when we're feeling that depleted, we just kind of become immobilized and we can't do much to take care of ourselves. So it's the human condition versus the soul condition. It's the soul's way of knowing that it has to do something differently, that it's actually going to kick the human condition into gear. So does that make sense? Okay, I'm seeing some nods. Okay. Other questions or comments? I know we have 4-ish, 5-ish minutes left, so I want to make sure that I answer anything else that I can for you. And it's okay if you don't. I just think that this is, I don't know of anybody who hasn't gone through a dark night of the soul. I would love to meet someone. I jokingly laugh, and she hasn't shown herself. Usually she makes an appearance, but my 3-year-old puppy, I got her when she was about, I think they said that she was like 8 weeks old, maybe 9 weeks old. And whenever I see her have a little, and if maybe she's frolicking in a field in her dream, but every dog goes through a little time when you think they're having a nightmare, and they're kind of moving in their sleep and they're making noises. And I look at her, excuse me, and I always laugh. It's like, I don't know how you could have anything that's ever negatively happened in your life, because she's had such a charmed life. And so for her, it's one of those things where I don't know how she could have a dark night of the soul. Emmy, my older dog, who was right behind me, however, went through her own dark night of the soul when my Australian Shepherd died very suddenly 3 years ago. In fact, it was 3 years ago, November 7th. She died very, very suddenly. Emmy and I were with her. I was trying to rush Chloe to the veterinarian, and she died in the back seat. And Emmy was back there with her, and Emmy was just traumatized because she's a very sensitive dog. She's a very sensitive soul. She was traumatized. She ended up with not pancreatitis. She had her own doggy issues, her belly issues after that. She became very highly anxious. She had separation anxiety. She had all kinds of things, physical kinds of things going on. And I knew it was her dark night of the soul. And I had to get the other dogs to help calm that. And eventually it did. But animals can go through it. Obviously people can go through it, and I think it's just one of those things where when and Emmy has changed. Her whole personality has changed since that happened. She's a much more serious dog. She's more sensitive in some ways. It's interesting, but the thing is, we can't discount the fact that animals have souls as well. So okay, let's see. Thank you for giving language to this stage. I haven't thought about it as a dark night of the soul before. Love it. Great. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And I want to say this, and Karen, I appreciate you saying that. I was thinking about this right before I went live, and I was thinking, why do I do these? I do them because I want to help people understand the difference between the human condition and the soul condition. I personally believe that unless we go deeper, at least until we start to realize that there's something else going on here, we're not going to get where we need to be. You know, I've been a psychologist for, how long have I been a psychologist? Well, let's say this. I've been doing therapy of some sort since I was 19 years old. I've been working in mental health since I was 19 years old. I turned 50 last year. I turned 51 in about 3 weeks. So that's a long time. What I do know is that it goes beyond depression and anxiety. It goes beyond medication. Um, it goes beyond what we're taught in textbooks. We have got to go deeper, because if you look at this planet and you look at this world, there's stuff that's not working. Would y'all agree? I mean, that's the thing. This world is very empty in many ways. It's not going well. And until we go deeper, until we go to that soul level again, which is what all of the ancient cultures did, we're really not going to get anywhere. And so I appreciate you saying that, Karen, because the thing is, I want people to get their souls back into their lives. I want them to get that depth back in and understand that until we start living from our souls again, we're kind of sunk. We're going to live less fulfilled lives. We're not going to be finding as much meaning. We're not going to be as strongly connected to people. We're not going to be as strongly connected with ourselves. And we're certainly not going to have the societies that we wish we had. And if you ever look at the ways that the ancient cultures lived, so whether it was North American or Native South American or the Mayans or the Incans or, you know, the Egyptians or whomever, they all led more soulful lives than we do. You know, and so the thing is, we're missing the boat here, which is why I think we're having so many difficulties on this planet. And that's why I do these things. I want us to start bridging the gap between the human condition and the soul. Because if, again, like I said, if we don't do that, we're really not going to get very far. So would love to hear any comments about that. But I just think that that's why I do these, and that's why I do the newsletter. That's why I do the other kinds of workshops and things, just to try to get the word out there as far as let's start talking about the soul again, folks, because in the last 100 years, believe it or not, it's been about the last 100, 200 years when we become modernized that we have gotten further and further and further away from actually talking about our inner selves. And we've talked much more about societal norms and how to fit in and all those kinds of things. And so it's an interesting trend, let's put it that way. So, okay, any final questions? Thank you, Janie. Janie says, powerful discussion, wonderful. I'm glad that you enjoyed. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So more information coming if you would like to, and I'm not really sure what the topic will be for next month, but I will be doing something probably mid-month for December. I'm usually trying to do it the second Wednesday of each month, just to kind of keep it consistent for people. And I want to do it the second one versus the third one, because by the time the third week comes around, we're already kind of into holidays and distraction and all that. But so I will be doing that. I also have some workshops coming up. I'm going to be doing a lot online next year, since obviously COVID has thrown things off. I have what I call a Color My Soul workshop. I've done this every year for I don't even know how many years now. It's usually an all-day retreat to help a person identify the theme that they need to work on for the upcoming year, and so get some clarity for where they need to take their souls. And it was just shared on Facebook, or my website was just shared on Facebook. But what I'm going to be doing this year for the Color My Soul retreat is doing it via Zoom, and also it'll be split into 2 Saturdays in January, and I'm also going to do a booster session, a follow-up session in July. And I have people commenting that how, you know, once they set their theme for the year, they know what they work on through the year, and that's really what helps them stay focused and grounded and take them further. So I'm going to be doing that. I've got some other things coming up. So if you're not already on my newsletter list and you want to be, you can go to www.Dr.KatherineT.Kelly.com, and on the right side of the screen, if you're on a desktop or a laptop, is a sign-up sheet for that, or sign up a contact form, and you can sign up for that, and then you'll get that information. Otherwise, follow me on Facebook. I'm happy to answer questions, and then you will be getting notifications as well for when more of the soul chats come up. But would love to hear from you. Hope you got some information from this. Hope this takes you to a different level of understanding that those dark nights are not terrible things. They feel terrible, but they're not terrible. They can take us to a new level if we let it, and that is part of our conscious evolution. So, okay, I have someone saying that they need to color my soul. Come find me, and that information will be on my website. We have a few more things we need to tweak to put it on my website, but it should be done in the next day or two. And then, like I said, all that information will be in the newsletter if you would like to sign up. One other thing, for those of you who are essential oil lovers or interested, I know that this is a hard time you can't really sniff things through screens. But on the 20th, the afternoon of the 20th and the morning of the 21st, I'm doing an individual, I'm calling a she showing, a Soul Health Essentials showing, where masks required, one person at a time, half an hour slot. If you're interested in looking at my lines of essential oils, then, and this is my Soul Soother, this is the one that I basically encourage people to wear or use when they're really feeling kind of anxious and torn up. It's one of my best sellers, and then Soul Center's the other one. But if you're interested and you would like to sign up for one of those half-hour slots, you can email me, message me, and I can get you to that sign-up list. It went out in my newsletter, and it's basically called Sign Up Genius. And there's a little slot you can put yourself in if you'd like to go. But again, one person at a time. I will be touching, you can point out which oils you want me to share with you and let you sniff. But I'm doing this in a socially distancing, safe way as possible if anybody's interested. And our website's been up and down, but I think if you go to soulhealthessentials.com, you can check out the website if you're interested. But great group. Thank you. Thank you. Any last comments? Make sure I'm answering anything. Diane, if you'd like to join the Color My Soul workshop, if you're not already on my list, let me know and we can put you on that list, or you can go to the website. Would love to have you, and let's all keep our tanks full. This is going to be an interesting winter and holiday season, and we will move forward. So have a wonderful night. I will talk to you sometime soon. Bye-bye.